Make a date with Reverend Dr. Ebenezer Markwei at 6 a.m. from Monday to Saturday on Graphic Online, via Facebook and YouTube as he expounds on matters of faith. Graphic Online, truth and accuracy every day.
Hello. I like to capture my thought this morning with avoidable death. Avoidable death. Or avoidable accidents. Maybe that's a better word. Avoidable accidents. And I'm talking about Jonathan. In 1 Samuel chapter 13 and 1 Samuel chapter 14. I see Jonathan also a very interesting character. In fact, people talk about the war prowess of David, but they don't know that Jonathan was also a man of valor. It was Jonathan, when Saul had war with the Philistines, it was Jonathan who took his armor bearer and then said to his armor bearer, let's go discover ourselves to the Philistines. We are taking a garrison, the two of us. You and I are going to wipe out a garrison. We are going to fight a garrison and beat them and defeat them. And that was a very tall order. And he didn't even know whether God was talking to him or not, because he said, if we stand and we say we discover ourselves to the Philistines and say, come down upon us, then we know that God has given us the victory. If they say we should stand there and wait, then we know that we should run for our dear life. So he didn't even know whether God had given him the victory or not. So it was a very iffy moment. Because once you introduce if, then there's an element of doubt. I don't know. But yet, he fought with those garrisons and defeated them and slaughtered them and won a great big victory for his father. And it was at that time that his father passed on laws that were crazy laws. How can you ask people to fast in the midst of warfare? And it was Jonathan was one of the first people to say, my father has troubled the land. So he was one of the first people to come into Revelation and say, my father has troubled the land. Jonathan was. Secondly, Jonathan was also the person who said to David, listen, there's an anointing upon your life, and that anointing is going to make you king. And he even said that after you become king, then I'll be king. So it was Jonathan spotted two things. His father had troubled the land. That means his father's rule was over. His father had become a despot. Number two, the anointing had shifted from his father and it was resting upon David. The call was on David. David was the man. Jonathan was that person. But you know what? Instead of, when it was time to go into the wilderness, when David was going into the wilderness, Jonathan, for goodness sake, you are in a covenant relationship with him. Go into the wilderness with him. But he chose the comfort of the palace. And he went with his father to war and he died. And David said, how are the mighty fallen? Tell it not in Gath. Jonathan should not have died. That death was avoidable. That end was avoidable. Jonathan would have lived. But he followed his father blindly to war and he died. You know, sometimes there are avoidable misfortunes, or there are avoidable things that we can avoid. And sometimes we can avoid this thing by sometimes avoiding some associations or avoiding some activity. We can avoid. We can avoid problem. We can avoid death. We can avoid some things just by what we do or who we associate with. So it was an avoidable death, but Jonathan died. For goodness sake, avoid danger when you have the choice to do so. See you later.